Hello and welcome to the United Forces show. It is Saturday, the 14th of September, 2024. Yesterday was Friday, the 13th. We'll ask Mike on that in just a sec. Today, we're going to be talking about the differences between the soul and the spirit, which is something that I can learn a thing or two from. So, before we get into that soul versus spirit discussion, Mike, what's your opinion when it comes to Friday the 13th? Is there anything unlucky about it, or is it just another day?
To me, it's just another day. I never really been into the whole idea of numbers and that sort of thing. I'm not saying that it might not have an effect on things, but for me, it just wasn't. Superstition really wasn't didn't have a hold of me. So I just wasn't really fan of it and didn't really get much into it. But I know a lot of people are very in touch with it, and to them it means something. So, but for me, I it's just never really meant anything.
I'm exactly the same. It's to me none of that. It's almost like I don't think about it and I don't really believe in it, so it's like it doesn't seem to affect me in any way. But I know there's some people, especially in the numerology types, and some of them I think take it far too far, where they get any numbers and they're trying to think of any possible mathematical calculation that they can somehow get these numbers to add up to a 666. Doesn't matter what mental gymnastics, as long as somehow they get a 666. Oh, that's a 9 if we twist it upside down. There's a 5 and there's a 1, so if we put those two together, that's another 6. And then there's a number 3, and of course, two threes, that's also a 6. So there's your 666, so problem solved. And I just think, like, this is BS. If there really was a 666 in there, okay, but when you've got to do all these various things, I just think you're probably taking it a little bit too far.
Right. I think the only real numbers game most people believe in is probably the lottery. And that's probably the more universal thought process for numbers. Other than that, I wouldn't know.
I had, speaking of the lottery, somebody said, and I really liked this. They say people don't play because they think they're gonna win. People play because they like the idea of what they might do if they did win, and I liked that because I thought that's probably true.
Sometimes, and I've noticed is you can imagine having something and the joy of having it. And then when you do finally attain it, it could be years or decades down the line, it somehow doesn't carry that same good, happy feeling that you had kind of imagining it or dreaming about it. It always seems like there's just not the same level of of care owning it versus believe really wanting it. Because a lot of times by the time people actually have the ability to buy something, they've thought about it so much that it just doesn't really mean as much. By the time you get it, it's kind of like, okay, I've thought about it so many times and for years, and I finally saved up for it. And now it's like doesn't really live up to doesn't live up to the standards that I thought it was going to meet when I was imagining having it. It was going to be great.
That describes every single Christmas I ever had. I must have looked forward to Christmas Day for weeks and weeks, and it came to it, and it was like halfway through Christmas Day afternoon. I'm like, is that it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, your imagination can be way more fascinating and exciting than the reality of when it actually happens. I mean, some people are actually let down when they get to that point where they reach the goal or they buy that thing. They're actually let down by it, kind of depressed at that point because they don't have that feeling. And it happens almost all the time. And that's kind of the way our system is set up in order to build you up and build you up and build you up. But when you finally reach the goal, you realize it's not that cool up here. So then you set another goal farther down the line. And it's just, you spend your life chasing all these goals. But every time you reach one, you realize it's not what you thought it was. So you go for the next one. And it's a never ending cycle.
I'll tell you where that is so true, and that is on, and anybody watching this who does YouTube will probably know. the YouTube monetization thing. And it's like the entire time you're running YouTube, it's like the goal is to get monetized. And it's like once you're there, you get this congratulate, oh, you can click here to monetize. And you're like, yay. And then they verify your ID and everything. And then you've got it. And it's like, oh. And then it's like, okay, it's exciting for the first few days while you're watching the first few pence or cents or your first dollar trickle into your account. And then once you've seen that, and it's like, you realize it's going to be really slow, probably for 99% of people, unless you decide to be a little bit, dishonest. And when you get these offers to promote things that is BS, but hey, it's money, and then
Right.
like I've always said, you've got to go to sleep with yourself every single night. So to me, it's it's not worth it. But for some people, it clearly is, because you get people that don't play mobile phone games going, oh, I really like the monster on level 23. Anyway, on with today's show. You're thinking
Yeah.
they've never
It
played a
seems
mobile game in their life.
Yeah, when you reach that goal or that peak, it ends up being just a flat area when you get up there. It's not this beautiful scenic view that you imagined it would be. It's kind of a flat, just plain area. And so that's why you set your sights on the very next one, thinking that that one is going to attain that your imaginative abilities are going to match what you were attaining. And it never seems to do that, because that's kind of the
No.
illusion we live in. And it's a serious letdown. I mean, people work their whole lives for things that they think is that's going to be it. And
Yeah.
when they get there, they're like, shit, this is it sucks. It's not what I thought it was. And like I said, if you work for years and years, maybe towards a goal of being a CEO, or getting your degree, and you really work hard for it, and then you get there, it doesn't hold water as well as you thought it would. So
Yeah, and there's no stadium full of people cheering when you get there. It's like nobody gives a shit.
yeah, that's right. It's like you get handshakes, maybe some cards and some money, some congratulations, but after that, it's crickets. You're on your own. I mean, that's how things work. and
Yeah,
and especially the younger generation, they're new to this, so they're just like, yay, this is going to be so great. And then when they get to that point, they're realizing, okay, well, that's what adulthood is like. Now you're going to reach those pinnacles, and it's not going to be everybody there waiting for you to
it's one of the
throw the big
toughest.
party most of
It's
the
one
time.
of the toughest lessons I think I had was that as a kid, not so much from my parents, but certainly from the teachers. They build you up, and you just imagine, oh, I can do anything I like, and this all sounds so exciting, and then you're so important, and you're unique and special, and all of this shit, and then you get there, and like you say, it's a bit of a letdown, to say the least.
Yeah, I remember, this is a short story. I was in grade school, and every day that I was sick that year, I just went to school. I mean, not real sick, but I mean, I went to school every day. I never missed a day all year long, because they would have said that's a big deal. If you miss school, it's a big deal. So I got to the end of the year. I even went to the last day of school, and none of my teachers said anything. And my last teacher, I said, "Hey," I said, I was here every day of the year. I said I wasn't absent one day. So she pulls out her roll book and looks through it and all. She goes, "Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, you were. That's good." And then I said, "I'll never do that again."
You didn't get even a gold star then.
Never got anything other
Uh,
than, yeah, you're right.
yeah, so just before we hit record tonight, I was telling Mike that this morning I was out taking a few pictures of the sunrise. I live not far from the sea at all, and just after the sunrise, did get a few nice pictures, but as I was leaving, I noticed in the distance in the sky was row after row of these, let's just call them what they are, chemtrails, and they were normally planes would fly down a corridor. They used to call, I don't know what they call them in America, but over here we sort of call them air corridors. So there would be like planes that would fly, and by and large,
Like that.
yeah, like a flight path, and by and large that still takes place. So you'd get a flight path here, maybe a flight path over here. They might cross, and it doesn't matter what day it is, they'll always be sort of in that same place. Well, these are very different because these lines spread across the sky. I imagine most people, if not everybody listening to this, will know what we're talking about. And because the summer has been atrocious this year in the UK, it's probably letting his dog out. The summer's been atrocious this year. And so when and I've observed this for several years now, but it's never been as bad as this year. When these planes line up the entire sky, when they put a grid on the entire sky, I already know I've got between 30, 45 minutes, maybe up to an hour, depends quite how many lines there are. And whatever blue sky was there before is going to be completely gone. And that's exactly what it was. So 7 o'clock, just before 7, I had this gorgeous sunrise. I thought about it. I came back, did my pictures, thought about it at 9 o'clock, went outside. The entire sky was grey. The entire sky. And I just, it got me down. And some people say, and I've heard this, oh, you shouldn't really let it get you down. That's what the system wants. And then there's, of course, the other side, which is, well, it's all a bit matrixy. But, Mike, I was with you when we mentioned this before. There are things that they're putting down that are not necessarily for our greatest good. So I'll hand it over, mate. So what have you got to say about these trails?
Well, it's not just the trails in general. We'll use those trails and we'll get into that. But the whole thing is we have all these things that happen to us in life. The chemtrails, you have a blue sky, everything's great. And after not too long, it turns into a gray sky and it sucks, everybody's kind of depressed. And then they're polluting, obviously, the air. That's polluting our air. We put up with things of that nature all the time. We accept them and just move on. Well, that's just their way of doing this, or that's okay. Who are they? And what rule do they have that allows them to poison us? I mean, where's the law that says, hey, those people or those guys or whoever have the ability to put our lives in danger? They can pollute our air, and we're just say it's okay. Who's going to hold them accountable? If we don't hold them accountable, then it will never happen. We allow things to happen all the time, and we just let it fly. We let it go. We throw, just let it roll off our shoulder. And that is our problem altogether. And I'm going to get into this very soon from an alternate viewpoint of what's of ours. And so what we're doing is we little by little just keep allowing more and more. When does it stop? When somebody comes to your door and sprays pesticide in your face or sprays your yard for you, when you have animals and it's a poisonous gas in your area, are you just going to accept it and just move on because you don't know who to call to take care of it? Well, it's not somebody we call to take care of it. We have to do it for ourselves. So this is just one small, very small problem that we have that we just allow to occur. And that's everything that what's happening to us. We just keep allowing it. We just let it fly. We let it go. And the more and more we do that, the more and more we run into issues like GMOs and that sort of thing. We allowed it to happen. If we would have put a stop to it many years ago, then things of that nature wouldn't happen. But we're living with and we're allowing ourselves to be poisoned, whether it's in the air, in the water, or in our food. So, or in any other injections, everything else. So, if you don't address things, it's only going to get worse. It's like if you've got a problem with your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, and you have disagreements with them and you don't bring it up and deal with it at the time, eventually things build up and build up to the point where something's going to break, whether it's you or them or the relationship or whatever. There's the pressure has to release at some point somewhere. So we have to deal with our problems because number one, nobody else is going to do it. So if we don't do it, then it's not going to get accomplished.
Yeah, one thing I want to say on from that though is that both the US and the UK, so probably other places as well, but certainly our two countries have admittedly done large scale experiments on the population, and then it's later been declassified. So then you've got to ask yourself, well, if they were declassifying today about stuff they were doing like 30, 40, 50 years ago, then who's to say they're not doing stuff today that they may declassify in years to come? And to me, it just seems obvious because when they have declassified, oh, 50 years ago we did this syphilis experiment and, whatever it was in America, or we were trying to make it rain and then the entire village washed away. What happened over here? It's like, okay, so it was declassified later on. Then what happened? So they said, okay, we did it. What did then the people do? And as far as I can tell, precious little is the answer.
Well, the answer from the majority of the population is always go, they got to do something about that. So it's the government causing the issue, the government doing what's illegal, and then you're expecting the government to go back and to apply justice to themselves, which is like saying, okay, asking the criminal what he thinks his sentence would be, and then base it upon what he says or she says. That's what we're doing. We're allowing the criminals to judge themselves, which is never going to happen. That's why we need to step in. You might say, well, it's too big of a blah blah, there's too much of this. Well, if you don't do anything, then nothing gets fixed and it keeps getting worse. Or if we decide to do something and we get together and as a group do something, and then the group begins to get larger and larger, eventually something's going to get done. But if you just allow it, then things don't happen. So I think this is probably a good time to bring in something, a perspective. Now, this perspective is looking at us the way we look at other things. So I would just say the ones who look down on us, the ones who are creating this, the overall perspective that's creating a situation, this is where I'm going to speak from. And I call it the devil's advocate because there's a reason behind it. And what's happening is if we want to understand what's happening to us, we have to understand the thinking process and perspective behind what is affecting us. And once we understand that, we begin to get a better grasp on where we are in the universe. So let me switch over real quick and begin it. I'm going to read something first, and then we'll kind of go into it. So, and this is from them, my perspective of them, my perspective of their perspective of us. You have spent so much time convincing yourselves that you are the top of the food chain, the true rulers of the world, yet you never stop to realize that your position is really no better than cattle or sheep. You live in our construct, you live by our rules, and you obey our orders just like well trained pets. You are weak, pathetic, easily malleable creatures with no drive and few morals. You adopt lies as truth without question, and you defend those lies against truth. You trust those that are untrustworthy and cast aside trustworthy individuals. You are lazy, complacent, and easily fooled by other fools. You don't seek truth, you seek validation. You turn against each other for something as simple as an idea, a word, a glance, a trinket, or a whim. You are unstable and needy because your only regard is for yourself. You have proven over and over that you are gullible, self serving, deceitful beings. There is no reason for you to look outside of your own illusion to find an enemy. You cover all those bases yourselves. You are our cattle, our sheep, and we lead you in the direction that we choose in order to benefit our needs and our desires. You are not in control, you are being controlled because that is how we have always trained you. You do not make decisions, You do make decisions, but since most are self serving, we do not need to work hard to predict your behaviors. We know that some will escape from this construct, but those numbers are few and far between. Our system of control is so successful that humans have voluntarily become their own prison guards. So there is minimal effort required for us to maintain your control. We would not be so successful if it wasn't for your compliance and your predictability. We can literally hand you nonsense and you adopt it, even though it goes against your own personal beliefs and experiences. You make our presence possible due to your personal actions and decisions that are almost always in support of our plan. If humanity did not support our agenda for your world, everything would drastically change to your benefit. But we know that you will not do that because people enjoy their misery. Can you blame us?
Very good, Mike. It reminds me somewhat, and I used to watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, the very first episode where Q, this sort of all-powerful, almost godlike entity, puts humanity on trial. And as you were reading that, it made me look that episode up, and it was Q was accusing humanity of being a dangerous, savage, childlike race, and I think some of what you've described there is sort of some of the more childish symptoms. You know, we're greedy, we're selfish, and it's one of those times. You know me, I'm not big into the Bible or any other particular religion, but one of the things that every so often when I hear people who are who are Christians who are in our community talk about the Bible, they do talk about in the Bible some of these things about being selfish and how actually being going for the truth is really important. And I can see why that if you just be selfish, lazy, you don't care what's right or wrong, you're just taking the easy path, you're actually indirectly assisting the devil's advocate that Mike was just speaking for, or speaking on behalf of, should we say.
Yeah, I mean, part of what's in there is also related to the situation we're in. People are not we're as spiritual beings, we're not like that. Those aren't our attributes. But because we're trapped in a physical body with feelings, emotions, and ego, um, we're gonna have those issues. But still, no matter what, even though we're in this situation, even though we're not normally like this, even though we have these other issues here, that is no excuse for us to do what we do. We have to decide to follow this agenda. We have to decide to, okay, so what's happening is we always get a choice. That's the thing. We're getting a choice, but the easy choice is always the one that is the worst one for us. If we go along with it, hey, I'll give you an extra $50. We just look the other way. We're just going to poison the air or the water. Don't worry about it. Blah blah blah. It won't affect you. What? See, the whole thing is we're put in this situation. We're placed here, and we're given the options. We can make our own decisions on how we're going to do it. And if we make bad decisions, then we follow an agenda that we don't want to go. And if we were to follow the true nature of ourselves, then we would be in a much better situation. So what we've actually done is we invite these beings to control us by making the decisions that we do. And if we made other decisions and lived in different ways, they wouldn't be welcomed here. Their manipulation wouldn't work because we're making decisions that are for us and the way things work. So it's I think I think at some point we're freezing up our signal.
It was just a second, so it was actually
Okay.
it paused for a few seconds and it caught up with itself. So I think we
Okay.
got away with it.
Yeah, but the whole thing is like we're allowing them to do what they do. They're not just breaking in and taken over. They're giving us the options, and we're deciding, okay, well, you can take over because we don't want to be responsible for ourselves. We don't want to take our lives into our own hands. We allow politicians or whoever to handle it, which is basically putting it in their hands. So we can't complain about the situation our world is in because we allow it. And by allowing it, we welcome them into our lives and to control us. So it's our fault. You can't blame some a predator for coming in, and but if the prey become lucid and they start to defend themselves, then the predator doesn't have the ground that they originally had. We just believe we're at the top of the food chain, but we're really not. We're way down there because these predators have taken over our lives, and they're so good at it that most people aren't even aware of it. But most people are aware that they aren't in control, or they think they might be in control, but they know that they allow everybody else to handle it. So in essence, I have to look at it from their perspective to understand how it's happening, so that the only way that you can affect anything is by understanding how the construct or the machinery works, how the mind works, how things work. Because you can't combat something that you don't understand the thinking process and the way things work. The only way you can make changes to it is by understanding the program, understanding the thinking process. And that's why I wrote that it out. This is put our we might have been trapped put here, but we make decisions, and those decisions affect us directly.
Just the last 20 seconds were missing. If you could just go back the last 20 seconds, see it. The last thing I heard was we might.
Well, I'll go back to it. Basically, what is happening to us is by our own hands,
Yeah.
based upon the decisions we make, no matter what construct or what matrix program we're put into, we still have to decide how we want it to go. And it's going in a direction that we don't like, but it's our own fault. You can't fault the makers of the program for the decisions you make within the program. So let's put an example. So you're playing a first person shooter game, okay? And these things are coming at you really quick, and you have to switch your guns real quick in order to meet the needs of whatever needs going on. So you aren't able to do it fast enough. So you blame the programmers for your inability to make, or you pick the wrong scenario. So you should have went right instead of left, and you're always going in the wrong direction. If you were to go this other way, it would be much easier, and you could get through the end of the game. So you blame the programmers for the program rather than the decisions you're making within the game. And that's what we're doing right now. We're blaming the programmers for the way we're playing the game.
It. One of the things I heard somebody else say, it was years ago now, I can't remember who it was, described exactly this, and they were saying it's like being in a cinema in the movies watching a film, and then you don't like the film that's being played and you're getting angry at the screen for what's on the film, when what you really need to be doing is getting up and either walking out or at least going round to where the projector's coming from. Because, and I think that analogy sort of fits here, that, we're all sat here looking up at the screen saying, I don't like what's happening. But by arguing with the screen, by having this disagreement with the screen, it's never changing anything. But
yeah, and it's like being in a first person shooter game, and you think, okay, well, I lost a life. Well, no, you're in the first person shooter game, but when you get shot, you feel it. You know what I mean? This is a real life video game, and the decisions we make are based upon our suffering, our life, and that sort of thing. So we have skin in the game here. You know, it's an illusion with a bite. So people can look at it kind of however they that works for them, the way they want to look at it or see it or perceive it. But they have to understand, and they can say, well, what doesn't matter really what decision I make because it's just not real anyways. Oh, well, yeah, it is. Because what's happening is if you end up back here again, it's going to be farther down the line. So everybody who makes the place worse, like making poor decisions for our part, are only going to put the future generations in a worse situation. So it's just going to keep compiling farther and farther down the line. So do you want to, if you're unsuccessful about leaving the system, do you want to be reborn into a total slave AI adaptation? Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. But what I'm saying is, since we make our own beds, we have to sleep in it.
That's 100% how I understand it and why I think this is so important because some people say, oh, there's this, and I'm just going to say no such thing as time and that it can happen anytime. But I'm thinking, yeah, but as we experience it here, there very clearly is time as we experience it. And so if we're cycling back and forth between, what we would call physical reality here, then we leave the bodies at the end of our lives, we get recycled back round, and it's the time is moving forward. I mean, when I had that hypnosis session and I went back, she sent me back to experience the previous life. I was a soldier on the beaches of Normandy. And so, it wasn't like I was coming from the future or anything. There seems to be this progression forwards through time. And you can see the way everything's going with AI, computer technology. They're talking about putting a chip in the brain. And I just think, okay, so however many years we've got left, be it 2 years, be it 20, or be it 50, imagine coming back round then. First off, you're unlikely to end up with parents that have got any clue what's going on, because that's almost always the case. And so if they've got this idea, oh, we've got this new medical implant and your kid's going to be left behind if he doesn't have it. I mean, let's face it, most parents who are still asleep, they're going to go, oh, well, little Timmy best have this implant then. And okay, so you imagine having that implant. What chances have you got waking up then? And I would say probably not many. And it just seems like they're adding another layer onto the. It's just like another wall. Like, we talk about the prison, and it's like you go from the prison into the prison yard. Well, this is kind of like they're trying to put us from the prison into solitary confinement. That's what it seems like to me. And perhaps, Mike, this is a good point where we can introduce the idea of what is the difference between the soul and the spirit, because it feels to me, and maybe I'm wrong, that some of these attachments that we have, whether they be ego or fear or things like that, is in some way related to this in some way.
Yeah, we've got a physical body, which is on the physical plane. Then we have a spirit body, which is on the astral plane, and there's about 12 or 13 planes on the astral. And what it is these bodies all are based on different frequencies. So the spiritual realm is on a higher frequency. It's not physical. So that's where the spirit body. Now the spirit body always resides at the astral level, at that frequency. It's just lined up with our physical body. They're in the same space. They're just they're at different places at the same space. And then the soul is a higher frequency, and that is on the mental planes, which is beyond the astral planes. It's above the astral planes. So the soul, the physical body, and the spirit all are within alignment of each other, but they all are on different frequencies, but they reside in the same space. Okay. So um, if we're going to be on the astral plane and consciously, then we have to move our consciousness to our spirit body, detach, and then go on the astral plane. And then if we're going to be on the mental planes, our consciousness has to detach and go into the soul, and then it travels on the mental planes. Now, the spirit and the soul both have limitations. One has the astral plane, one has the mental planes. They can't go beyond those levels. So the soul doesn't travel on the astral, and the spirit doesn't travel on the mental planes. So they have their own states of being, just like us being on Earth. We could go below the Earth, we can go above the Earth, and we can go on the Earth, but we can't go beyond into the spirit realm, and we can't go beyond into the mental planes with our physical bodies. So those bodies all have their own places to be, like their own planets. You can almost think about it that way, their own realms. So then we also have our subconsciousness, which is kind of a hive mind that is connected within our bodies. And then we have the ego, obviously, and our feelings and our emotions, all the junk that are attachments to us. And then on top of that, we have our consciousness, which is basically the us of us. We are the consciousness, and somehow it's trapped within these three bodies, this and connected to the subconscious, and all these feelings and emotions and the ego are all kind of surrounding it, that are trapping it. So that's where we all are. Now, when people say, when they go on, they go through an NDE or whatever they call it when you die, and they call it a soul trap. Well, it's really not. Your soul is not you. Okay, so your body's not you, your spirit's not you, your soul's not you, your subconscious is not you, your ego's not you. None of your feelings or emotions or anything are not you. You are only your consciousness. So when they say soul trap, it might hold the soul in that place, but you're still trapped within the soul. The soul is actually a trap. They're saying that it's holding your soul because that's you. That's not correct. Your soul is part of the trap, part of the three body, subconscious, ego, blah, 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 trap. That's all a trap. So when we go from one to the other, we're still stuck within a body. Our consciousness is still trapped within that. So when people say soul trap, they really don't know what they're saying, because um, it's not the proper um, it's not the proper description of what it is. You want your consciousness to be free from your body, your soul, your spirit, and your subconsciousness, and all that. You want it to be free. So you're not your soul. Your soul is just another body that you're trapped within, because it has its limitations, just like the physical and just like the spirit.
This is all new to me, Mike. And the best way that I can think of trying to phrase this differently, then, and perhaps you can tell me if I'm going wrong, is that our consciousness is our true essence. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And then the soul is almost like a, if we just imagine for a sec that the consciousness is like a body, the soul is like a piece of clothing put on top of the body, and then like the spirit is another piece of clothing put on top of that. And it's like the system can grab hold of this clothing, but it can't grab hold of us directly. So it uses the soul and the spirit as almost like as a container to hold on to us and to put us into this matrix. And if we were to somehow separate from the soul and the spirit, it's almost like we would just pass straight through the net. But how does that analogy go?
Yeah, that works. I mean, the whole thing is, I say our consciousness is our constant. That is the us. And the reason why I came to that conclusion was because I know how I've experienced going from my physical body into my spirit body, which means your physical body is no longer animated as long as you're consciously in that spirit body. So then when it returns, then it's animated. But at that point, your spirit is not animated by your consciousness. So then when I'm doing utilizing the portals, my consciousness is traveling, not my body, my physical body, not my spirit, and not my soul. They're all still aligned within that place. And I know I'm in two places at one time, yet I'm not using any of those bodies. And I've done it so many times, it tells me that our our um our constant, which is our consciousness, it is everything we need, and the bodies are just a vehicle they're utilizing realm. I can only go so far. When I go in the spirit body, within the spirit realm, I can only move into the soul. Consciousness moves my soul. I'm trapped on the mental planes. I can only go so far. So I'm limited in all three of those. But if I utilize my consciousness, I can go anywhere. So that tells me that I don't need any of the bodies. The bodies aren't required. And also, when my consciousness travels through these portals, what I'm doing is I'm using telepathy. There's energy exchanges. There's all these things, and they all occur um, autonomously. I don't have to think about trying to use telepathy. It's just an automatic thing. You know how to do all this. You don't. There's no. There's no bodily requirements at that point. There's no having to learn things to understand how they work. I mean, there's no learning how to be there. It's all autonomous. So what we're doing is when we're in these bodies all have some requirements. They have some mass. But our consciousness is the freedom of the us. And that's why we want to be separated from all that junk, all that baggage, all those traps in order to get away. So when we move on, we don't want the soul, we don't want the spirit, we don't want the body, we don't want the ego, we don't want the subconsciousness. We want freedom from all that because that is not the us. Those are nothing but like throwing blankets of lead on us. You know, they're weighing us down. They're making, instead of being unlimited and universal, when we're within those bodies, we are limited and we aren't free because we can only move within those realms. Each of those bodies only can exist within those realms. Can't travel any farther than those. That's their limitation. So they all have limits, but as a consciousness, we don't have any of those limits. We don't have any of those needs or wants or desires. We don't have limits because that's not what we are. We are energy. We are not mass. We are not beings. We are we are we are knowledge, we are knowing, and we are consciousness.
So would it be fair to say then, at some point, we were tricked, deceived, whatever, not just into coming to this earth, but actually, at some point, we were somehow talked into or tricked into attaching to a soul or a spirit, whichever one comes first. Perhaps it's is it the soul first on the mental, then the spirit in the astral? Is that the order? Which is the
Well, I
higher?
think if you're going to be, born or whatever, you have the physical body, and if you're alive, you have the attachments of the spirit, and then the soul. Now, if we die and the physical body dies, then you will move into the spirit realm, which the spirit and the soul are in the same place. So you're within the spirit and the soul. So you get in there, and you're if you're on the astral, and this is all being done on the astral, then you're within the spirit body. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
So I just want to clarify that point. So we didn't come from our true sense. It seems directly to Earth. We must have come from our true sense, maybe even through something else. I don't know, but through the astral first, in order to get these attachments, right?
no, I don't know. Oh wait,
Yeah.
uh, we are we are trapped within this whole capsule or this whole tomb. I'll call it a tomb, which is a three body system with the subconsciousness. So basically, when we come here, we are consciousness, and then we're trapped within these vessels, and it's just a one piece vessel, kind of. I mean, if you have a physical body and no spirit, no soul, then you're not going to be
Oh
human.
yeah, for sure,
You're going to be a drone.
for
So
sure. But
I'm sure there's different levels of whatever.
yeah, I'm just wondering. Let's assume that we're in our free original state. That our consciousness. I'm just thinking, did they? You're describing these three levels almost like as a tomb. Do you think we were taken and put them straight into that tomb in one go? Or do you think first, oh no, let's get them into a spirit first, then get the spirit into the soul, and then get that into the body? Do you think that was like three separate layers of deception?
I don't. I really don't know, and I haven't looked into it only because the fact that what I'm trying to do is is to learn the construct, to learn the thinking behind it, the ideas, and
Okay.
how things work. I haven't gone into a lot. I don't get into a lot of the specifics on purpose because once you start going down those paths and it just keeps branching off, it's like following the shiny objects. You
Okay.
know, I have to stay focused on what's important to understand in order to get to where I need to go.
For sure. So can I just ask then, perhaps if we reverse that question, do you think therefore we actually need to escape from all of these three as we leave to get out of this matrix, let's call it? So we need to get out of the body and the soul and the spirit. Do you think that all of those things need to be done?
Oh, you have to get out of all three vessels, and you have to get detached from this what I would call it almost like an octopus, which is the I call it the enemy within, which is the subconsciousness. That's also somehow attached. Now, it might be attached through the bodies, or it
Yeah.
might be attached directly to our consciousness. I don't know how the infrastructure is structured around us, and that's why what I'm trying to learn, so that I can understand how we can detach. The whole thing is there's a method of attachment, and there's got to be a method of detachment. I don't have that information.
I gonna tell you my suspicion, and that is that these attachments are somehow based either through the soul or the spirit, whichever. And the reason I say that is because when you get these people who have lived before, who consciously remember living before, and they meet up with their previous family, and I'm thinking of that one case in particular, that lad in America who was a fighter pilot on an aircraft carrier. And anyway, the point was when he met up with his previous family, who is of course now his sister. So he dies in this aircraft carrier crash and is reincarnated as this little boy. Now his previous sister is now an old woman because he's reincarnated, but he remembers her, and they end up meeting. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because the sister says, this old, like 90-year-old woman, I can't explain it. So there's some fan belt cat. I can't explain it. I don't know why, but that is my brother. And so this 90-year-old woman is talking about this 7, 8-year-old kid. And I can only think that there are certain traits that we have. Some of us are better at this, and some of us not so good at that. And I include with that these feelings of that, not just, oh, I'm good at maths or I'm not so good at drawing, but ego and these things are somehow attached, so that if we were to come back round, people would recognize, if they knew us very well, those traits, like this older sister did of this younger boy who had reincarnated, who was in fact her brother from before he was killed in World War II. And that's why I think, and again, I could be wrong, but it just seems to me that these traits are attached on that soul or spirit level. They're not actually with the body, because of course, when the
Oh no,
body,
yeah, the body, the soul, and the spirit are going to be universal, and they don't die. So we're probably reusing the soul and the spirit
yeah,
over and over again, and then just reattaching to new bodies. That's probably the way the system works. Like I said, I haven't delved into it that much, but that would make the most sense because you don't die on the astral, and your soul is pretty much universal with that. So just like the spirit is, they're not physical, so they don't degrade like a physical body would. So they're probably reutilizing it and doing like I don't know if they're doing a memory wipe, or it's possible there's no memory wipe. It's possible there isn't a memory wipe. Maybe the subconscious just is just the monitor and filters everything so that and then it might miss something because no technology is perfect. So it's just possible that the subconsciousness is the one that's keeping control of everything, and the information is probably still in within somewhere, but we just can't access it because we're being blocked, or filtered.
yeah. That to me makes the most sense. That what you've just said, and again, that's not to say I know that's the case. It just
No,
it,
it's just, you know, there's
it
there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but I'm just looking at it from, you know, the basis of, you know, those are not going to die. The soul and the spirit don't die.
yeah.
So why wouldn't they not be reused and then and reconnected with another physical body? It seems like that would be the most realistic and the most I don't know, the most reasonable way to do something.
Yeah, from their point of view, it would be probably the most efficient and makes sense.
Right. Right, exactly. Less work. So
All right. I'm not really sure where else we can go with the soul and spirit issue. But one thing, Mike, that also we mentioned just before we hit record was we were talking about UFO disclosure and the idea that some people, rather than just accepting that there is something to this, are actually waiting for the government to tell them that, oh yes, by the way, UFOs are real. So what is this need that some people have to look to authority to tell them something is before they are able to accept, well, it must be true then?
I think we've all understand that level of thinking because we've all been there, you know, at some point. And I mean, waiting for somebody else to tell you what you already know, if you think about it in that way, it seems completely foolish. I mean, we're like, that's dumb. Why would I need somebody else to tell me what I already know? Because that's the way things really are. Either you believe in UFOs based on all the evidence if you really looked into it, or you don't. And if you do believe in them, then why would you wait for some government agency or somebody else to tell you that it is true? You know, and then they keep saying the disclosure. Well, they keep pushing it back. The goalpost post keeps moving. It keeps moving. That's the way they do everything. It's just going. That's just what way. And that's a perfect example of what we have to live through all the time. People, if science doesn't doesn't support it, or the government doesn't support it, then it can't be real. It can't be true. That's what everybody's been looking at. It's like, well, I can't believe it till the Science magazine tells me that it's real. But then again, the Science magazine in a couple of years will probably tell you, well, that's not real. It was just something else. Now, it's, you know, everything's going to change. Everything is going to. It's a never ending cycle to get you to keep following something. You have to use your own brain. You have to question everything, and that's why I tell people, don't wait for somebody else to tell you something. Don't wait for somebody else to trigger you to do something about something. You need to be the one to do it yourself. Quit being lazy. Quit being complacent. If you want to know when you should do it, right now, get off the chair and do something about it. Because if you don't, it's not going to happen. If you think that there's somebody else going to go out and do it, you're in an illusion because they're just like you. They're thinking you're going to do it, and you're thinking they're going to do it. And somebody else is going to think those guys will do it. Don't leave it up to somebody. You can't trust everybody else to do it because the ones we trust to do it have already screwed us over and over, and they'll tell you, oh no, we got you this time. Oh, we're going to fix it this time. And they keep doing it over and over, and you keep falling for it because you want to be lazy and complacent. You're too busy. You don't have time to do it. Well, if you don't have time to take care of what's happening to us now, then guess what? Eventually it won't matter what you think because you won't. Right now you have the ability to make change. Later on, you won't have that ability. So why wouldn't you jump on the bus now rather than wait? Why would you wait till it doesn't matter?
It reminds me very much actually of the whole savior complex in one way. And one of the things I've been frustrated with over the years, and I'm not saying I was any better, it's just something that's frustrated me, is as I've done a lot of research on various different topics and reading in the comments sections, I must have read this comment 1,000 times, which was, oh my God, we have to do something. This can't be allowed to continue. And then that would be the start and the end of the comment. And so I would reply, so okay, very good, but what? And it's like nobody or almost nobody ever wanted to get to that next level. It was like, okay, we agree there's a problem. We all agree something must be done about this, and then we go on. It's like, that's the end. And it's like, and it was this frustration of this, no, 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 you're missing the third piece here. You've got part one, part two, but we need that. And what is that something? And I don't know why that was. I guess it's just, it feeds back into the thing before. Well, we're just waiting for somebody else to do it. One thing, Mike, I did want to ask you, and again, this is in the UFO sort of arena, and I'm not sure how tuned in you were into this topic years ago, but there was always ridicule associated when it came to mainstream media and the UFO topic. And then around, I'm wanting to say 7 or 8 years ago, but I might be off by a year or two. One day, the New York Times came out and said, "Oh, F-18 pilots are chasing these UFO things almost on a daily basis." They went ahead and posted that now infamous UFO clip where the F-18's got that FLIR, that forward-looking infrared, and it's basically chasing what they called this Tic Tac object. And then the very next day, or within 24 hours of the New York Times saying that, as far as I can tell, every single media organization on Earth, so if that doesn't tell you they're all working as one, I don't know what does, repeated that same story. And so effectively, the media went from complete ridicule and nonsense and all the rest of it to, oh yes, by the way, the Navy's chasing them, and we've got a department in the Pentagon that investigates these things, and we're setting up all these other. And it's like, why do you think? And this is just an opinion thing, but why do you think they went from ridicule to, oh yes, by the way, we know this and we've been investigating them? What happened there?
It's hard to um, see from the viewpoint of the ones who are delivering the message, because they have several reasons to do whatever they do. A lot of people think, oh, these just people are morons or anything. The morons are the ones that are reporting, and the morons are at the physical level. But the real understanding and the real planning is not on this level. It's far beyond this. They understand us psychologically better than we could ever understand ourselves, and they know all about us. So when all this information funnels down, it's planned far ahead of what we could ever imagine. So trying to because what we're doing is we're hearing something and then we're trying to figure out where it came from, or why they're doing it, or so we're so far behind that we're even behind the current events. We're receiving it right away, and then we're trying to figure it out afterwards. So we're just following that shiny object and then trying to figure out. And sometimes the information that comes out is just to screw with you, just to fuck with you. That's exactly what it's for. It's to throw people off. I think I got a rhythm going on here. I think I figured out a pattern. Oh, what was that? What was that? You're never going to figure things out when it comes from a source that is far beyond your conception. You're trying to, and you're so far behind their plan that it's just not. It doesn't work that way. So what we need to do is start by dealing with our problems right now, the issues that are out there, dealing with those, and then that will affect the decision making progress that they do and the news. So we will affect, in general, we will affect the future news by affecting what's happening in this world, because everything is systematic. Everything is set up almost autonomously. You do this, this happens. You do this, this happens. So everything that we do is going to determine what news is going to come out. If we start making positive changes in this world, the news is going to change. It might get worse or whatever, but it's going to change based upon what we do. Our decisions in general decide what we're going to experience, because we have to make those decisions. So like I said in that devil's advocate, what's happening is if we don't choose for ourselves now and our future generations, then it's only going to get worse because we have decided. First, we decided to be in this mess because we've allowed it to happen. Do we want to allow things to get worse by just saying, yeah, that war is just not right? I don't, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Are you going to do something? Are you going to go out there and rally? Are you going to protest? Well, that probably won't do anything. Well, have you tried? Nobody does that anymore. If you don't do anything, then don't expect change. Expect it to get worse because it will. We're on the path that where if you don't stand up now and start doing something, it's too late because we're going to run out of time. We're running out of time. And if you don't do something, listening to Joe Rogan and all these other people, that's fine, but that's not going to help you. It's up to you. You're the one that has to make the change. And if you don't do anything, then nothing will get done and it's going to get worse. And all you're going to do is bitch about it.
I have just looked up while you've been talking about that some times in the recent history where people getting together has actually stopped or changed something from happening, and I'm just going to quickly go over this list. The first one in the list is the Vietnam War protests, and it says widespread opposition to U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War was gaining momentum throughout the 60s. Protests were mainly led by students, activists, as well as veterans. The opposition reached its peak after the Tet Offensive in '68, continuing with mass demonstrations like the 1965 moratorium. Not heard of that one. To end the war in Vietnam. Although the government was initially resistant and did cause problems for some of these people, like the Intelco Pro, the growing unpopularity of the war and pressure from these protesters contributed to Richard Nixon's eventually adopting the policy of Vietnamization, which was basically to hand over the security/war to the people that were there, the South Vietnamese, right? Another one was the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s, so going back like a decade earlier. We also have the Watergate scandal in the 70s. After the break-in and subsequent cover-up were exposed, public pressure grew for transparency and accountability. Journalists, most notably from the Washington Post, pushed the story while citizens demanded action back when the media had that veneer of authenticity to it still. The scandal led to Richard Nixon resigning. We've also, so we've got the Stop Online Piracy Act, that's from 2012. I've not heard of that one. We've got the Dakota Access Pipeline. I remember that from 2016. Now, that was every day in the news at one point. I remember there being activists there. There was quite a bit of conspiracy stuff, I seem to recall. I don't know if they were sort of using energy weapons to make protesters feel unwell or whatever, where they were trying to put a pipeline through some North America, Native American land. And apparently the protests for the construction against the Dakota pipeline, which they argued posed a threat to their water resources and their sacred lands. After many months of this, the Obama administration halted construction in late 2016, while the Trump administration later reversed this. So, I mean, okay, he later reversed it. Perhaps they needed to protest again, but it showed it made a difference for however many years. You had the Occupy Wall Street movement, and although it didn't directly stop any government policy, it significantly shaped public discourse on inequality. And of course, I think everybody's heard of the Occupy Wall Street movement, even if
Right.
we...
I mean, I'm not expecting everybody to go out and protest. That's not the only thing that we can
Oh,
do.
there's many things.
There's many things you can do. And the first thing you can start with, and I've said this many times, you have to get yourself in check. You have to get yourself under control. You have to be in control of yourself so that you're outside control. And when you start to become in control, you will no longer accept a lot of these ridiculous, asinine rules that are meant to confine you or that are meant to have you do things. And we can get into rules too, because rules are created that you say, okay, well, people vote on the rules, or the government creates the rules. It goes through Congress, or however the rules are made based upon either states or federal rules. What happens is the majority of people are held to the rules. We're supposed to follow the rules, yet the politicians and the criminals don't. And let's give you clear examples about that. They steal, politicians and big corporations steal money all the time. They might get a slap on the wrist. Nobody goes to jail, or they pick a patsy that had nothing to do with it. They throw him in jail. Or with the criminals. Now, say I'm just gonna say you're a person on the street and you have $100. Is all you have to your name. That's all you have to survive on. You're on the streets. Somebody robs you for $100, and the cops come if they do show up, and they say, "Well, if it's anything under $1,000, we can't do anything about it." Well, if you only have $100, what's that mean? That means they're not going to do anything about it because you don't matter. So it shows you that the rules are a joke. The rules are nothing but a fallacy. They're imaginary because they don't apply to those above us and those around us. Rules are for your psychological being. Rules are to hold you within parameters, within this box. That's what those rules are for. And if you are living by the rules and you're a working person and you own your own home or your own car or whatever, and people are stealing from you and they won't get prosecuted, or nothing will happen to them, eventually you're saying, well, hell, why do I follow the rules? Because I'm following the rules and I'm getting destroyed, and I'm the one working for it. So what you need to do is you need to understand the rules are just an illusion. Those rules are there to confine you. And because people become their own best prison guards, they're overseeing themselves to make sure they're staying within those parameters. They're the best. The people that are the best followers are the ones who are their own guards. They guard themselves for the rules. So what you want to do is once you understand these rules are a constant joke. Now I understand, even with the rule of death, you can't kill, but if your government says it's okay, then it's legal. Okay, so where does that come from? You know what I mean? Or if a criminal does it and they don't want to prosecute him, then it's okay. So you look at things in different lights, and you have to understand by looking at it from the full spectrum that these rules are nothing but a way to disengage you and to keep you sitting there becoming the victim. The rules turn you into a victim.
I also see that the rules are being selectively applied, not just against those who are above us in the way that society is run. I got to be careful how I say that, because they're not above us at all, and then everybody else. But I also see it applied selectively in that those people who are, and I'm just going to use the phrase, trying to do the right thing, and those people who are not, which we could describe as not just criminals, but
drug addicts, yeah,
but also people that have got an agenda to just fuck things up. Let's say how it is.
Right.
And so, if you're trying to do the right thing, it seems to be that they apply the rules very much to the letter against you. But if you're somebody fucking things up, they almost like let the rules slide. It's like, and I find that strange as well.
Yeah, it's selectively done, and it's done for a reason. Just if you want to destroy the middle class and the way things work, then you will take all the people who have something to lose and you will attack them. But those attackers won't ever be prosecuted or anything. They're allowed them to run free. And the ones who make the rules are the ones that don't follow the rules. They enforce the rules on us, but not on those that they choose not to. So the rules are nothing but a joke and a confinement process. They're more of a mental confinement process because once you see what's really happening, you understand that it's all based upon the rule following people to follow the rules to the T, but then we're going to attack them from outside and there's nothing they can do about it. They have no recourse. And that's the way they want it.
They want us to know as well that they don't follow the rules. Because I remember here in the UK when they were doing this whole lockdown business. And so, of course, nobody was allowed outside. I think you could go for exercise 30 minutes in a day, but you weren't allowed to even sit on a bench. It were ridiculous. And then I remember the news during the middle of all this at one point saying that some of these politicians, the ones that were actually supposedly behind it, right? Of course, we know they're just puppets, but this is why I think this is such an interesting story. The politicians that were behind the lockdown were actually caught going to each other's houses having these parties in while there was this supposed thing. And I remember thinking, right, not only are they supposedly flouting the rules, but the media, which we know is controlled, and we know if they wanted to cover it up, they just won't fucking talk about it. And if anybody did, they'd just say, no, that's a conspiracy theory. So the fact that the media were pushing this, to me, says they want you to know that the rules for you are not for them.
They were spitting and shitting right in your face, and you allowed it. Everybody allowed it. Everybody watched it. Most people complained about it. Nobody did anything about it. It all stayed the same. It was status quo, and everybody followed the rules. And everybody who followed the rules got what they deserved when it came down to it. That's what happens. And they wanted to put small businesses out of business. They had an agenda to do a lot of things. And if you didn't like it, then you should have learned from it. And by focusing this, then again, here we go. We're looking when you look at mainstream media or even the alternative media, all they want to talk about is that situation that began 4 years ago. They're rehashing the same stuff. What's that going to do in order to help us move forward? If you're going to hyper focus on what happened 4 years ago, you know what happened, and then they're stupid enough to say, oh yeah, well, they're probably going to do the next one again. No, you follow the first one, they're going to change the game. They're not going to play the same game again. It'd be stupid to believe that they're going to go through the same thing again. They're going to change it up and do it something completely different. They change it every time. That's why you could be watching for the same tricks that they played in the past. That's not going to happen again. They're going to play different tricks on you. But you're not looking forward, you're looking back. Everybody's looking back. Everybody's focusing on that. Okay, you can beat a dead horse so much, you have to move ahead. You have to move along with your life. It happened. You fell for it. Now be prepared for something else. Don't be prepared for the same thing, but also set ourselves up so that we're looking ahead, moving ahead away from the way they're trying to push us. Because people are like sheep. They fall in line and they'll follow the flock right off the edge of the cliff because they don't think. They just want to have somebody to put their faith in so they can follow them right off the cliff.
And they, if that somebody's wearing a suit and has that tone of voice and uses the words in the right way, it works. Just when you were saying that, reminded me of that quote from Benjamin Franklin: "Those who give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." And that I think is very true, whether he really did say that or not. But the people that want to give up some of their freedoms to have a bit more safety will end up with neither.
We've all bought into a false sense of security, and that's all it is. And they know they know where our heartstrings are. They know where our wants and needs are, and they pull at those and they play us. It's a psychological game. Most people aren't smart enough to realize that. Some are, but it's not the fact that you just know it. It's the fact, are you going to do something about it? And if you don't, then you're no better than the people that just just fuck. I mean, just sitting in your house preparing yourself is not going to do anything. That's not going to affect anybody else. It's not going to affect your world. And then what are you going to do? Save yourself in this little box so that when you go to try to move out, it's being staying in your own little box is not going to save you, because you have to eventually come out of that box. You have to, and when you do, then you won't be in control.
I like the idea of trying to work on yourself in order to. It's almost like learning to walk before you can run. And like you say, getting in control of yourself. And I know we've touched on this before, but I really think this is, if you don't get this bit, you're going to, there's no point even trying to do the rest. And one huge part of that is being able to think critically. There's being in control of your emotions. There is not flying off the handle as soon as something happens, and using these things together to try and identify when something does come out of left fields. Because, I find it interesting that you say you don't think that they're going to use a, another sort of a virus kind of thing, because they've done that now and that's what people are looking for. So they're going to try something else, which does make sense to me. But then I'm also thinking back to when they were doing the terrorism thing, and it was at one point over here in Europe, it was like every week was another one of these supposed terror things where yet another brown person had supposedly run rampage with a van or whatever it was that they'd supposedly done. But it was always it was always the Muslims. That was it. It was always a Muslim. And then, of course, as soon as the virus rolls around, all the Muslims decide, oh, that's enough. We'll not do that anymore, because of course it's all
Right.
BS, right? But to me, it's just my opinion. If they do decide to pull another virus or virus variant or whatever the heck that they're going to do, and of course we know it's going to be BS if they did do that, I just think that the majority of people would fall right into line with it. And I think even though maybe after years they finally begun to see through this one, a new name, scary sounding name, bright red graphics as the numbers start, oh, there's this many people dead. And again, it's all doesn't have to be real. They just need a number on the screen that's rolling round. I just think, and perhaps I'm being a bit pessimistic here, but I just think the majority of the people would just go right on with it again. And of course, they can't call it COVID. That's the only thing they can't do, is call it COVID. They would have to call it something completely different.
Right.
And I think in order for it to work next time, if there were to be a next time, they would have to, they couldn't just say people were dying. I think they would have to try and show that people were. And I think the best way to do that, because they control the food supply, that it's like, well, at least the vast majority of it is centralized. I just think they'd just put a few things in some of the food. People would become ill, and then, of course, they're never going to blame the food. They're just going to say, see, this is this new thing. So again, and that would almost be against then the truth community, because of course if they say there's a new virus, we already know the truth community is automatically going to say, and it's going to be automatic, oh no, there isn't, and I'd probably be one of them. And so then if they were to put some, and again, not viruses in the food, but actual poison chemicals in the food, and people became ill, then the news would go, see, these people are ill from the virus. And then I think the truth community, it would somehow cause a problem, because there would actually be people dying, and the truth community would be trying to say, oh no, it's not. And then I think at some point there would be this, like, a disconnect between what's actually happening and what the truth community is saying, because of course we're expecting the whole thing to be BS, and actually there's something to it, just not what they say. And they're probably going to use that to fracture the truth community. I don't know, that if they do it, that's just going to be my guess as to what they might play.
Nope. No matter what happens, when the truth does come out, and it doesn't support the media, then they're not going to put it on there. So it doesn't get out to the majority of people. So whether or not you have the truth, and what happens is people look for truth where there is been uh, okay, so people look for truth in liars, is what it is. So the media, they turn to the media for truth, and it's lies. They turn to the supposed you know overseers of truth on the internet, and those are based by the same media sources. So they're looking for truth in lies, so they adopt their lies, and then they get so sold on their lies that when they will defend those lies against any truth that comes along. So that's what we're doing. We're constantly battling, reality and lies and that sort of thing. So even if the truth did come out a day later after this whole thing started, whatever starts, people are still going to believe those lying because they have set a precedence with them, and they believe they can depend on them, and then they will go on social media and they will defend those lies against any truth because they're they're so enamored with that information and that source that they will protect it at any cost.
I've seen
So
I've seen
yeah, so
people do that who I would
so
respect.
basically we're talking to the people that probably have a good knowledge base, or are trying to get out of that situation, and we're just here to try to give them a big kick in the ass. Because if they already don't believe it, we're probably not going to convince them. That's fine. I'm not trying to convince people. I'm just trying to get people that are on the fence or on this side to get moving, to do something about what's happening. Because even if the people who were completely enamored with that and start to believe on it, it could be a long period of time before they could um, even swallow most of the stuff that's going on. So, we have a very small percentage of people, very, very small, that are going to either listen to or listen to our messages. So that's who we're talking to. And to me, I'll tell you right now, that's the most very, very the top of the um, frustrating list for me is the fact that there are so many people that just say they would get it, but they don't want to buy into anything. They don't want to listen to anything, or they've already got their preconceived notions
Yeah.
of, of where it's really at. And instead of being open minded and listening to other things, they're closed minded and they will stick with that, and they will take that to the grave with them because that's where they're going to go with it. Because the alternative media or the alternative sources have convinced them that these people are true because they got a lot of views, they got a lot of comments, they got a lot of this because, yeah, they're being supported by the system. And that goes along with supporting the system. So when you get a lot of that, then they buy into it. And, I don't know how many times I've been contacted by other people, and they'll either give me quotes from I guess maybe other books or something like that, or ask me questions related to something that it doesn't explain what they mean. So I have to write them back and I say, I don't understand what you're saying. Is this somebody's quote, or is this information based upon somebody's findings? There's not enough information there for me to put it together to understand what your question is. And a lot of times it's based upon what they believe, what somebody else says, and I'm not here to debate or discount anybody else's information. I'm here to give information to people and allow them to absorb it for themselves and to question everything, even that I say. But I'm not here to try to uh, validate somebody else's information or debate it. I don't have time for that. I'm trying to give you information. If it's information that you don't want to accept or to utilize, that's fine. Go ahead and stick with what you got, because I'm not trying to put you on a train. I'm trying to put you in line with yourself. Don't follow me, follow yourself. I'm talking independence. I'm not talking dependence on somebody else. Follow them to their to their conferences, or pay $150 an hour to talk to them on the phone. I don't do that crap. I can see right through that crap. They're selling you snake oil, and they're going to keep you coming back because they're going to tell you the next time you're going to have a much better experience. And I know for a fact you're going to feel so much better tomorrow because the moon and the stars are in the right angle to shine in your ass when you're taking a shower at night, and it's going to work out way better. So, I'm not here to blow smoke up your ass. We're not here to blow smoke up your ass. We're here to lay things out. But we're not here to compete or anything. That's not our job.
Yeah, that is one of the hardest things for a lot of people to hear. We all know the oldest trick in the book is to find a new way of telling people what they already think they know, and that of course is the easiest way to be popular, right? You just if you want to set up a channel and be successful, all that you need to do is find a new way of telling people that Trump's going to save the day. And if you can find a new way of saying it, you'll blow up tomorrow because it's what people want to hear. Because like we've said before, okay, well, I don't need to do anything then, do I? I'll just sit here and Trump's going to fix the problem, which is, of course not true, but many people like that. And so then there's the people that realizing that isn't the case, and then on from there is trying to do something. And I think, Mike, and I don't know how feasible this would be in a future episode, is and I know I keep coming back to it because I think it's so important, critical thinking. And I know everybody in the truth community likes to think that they can think critically, but I know for a fact they can't. And I suspect anybody that's been watching this and still is, most I am sure will be able to think critically, but I'm still thinking there might be a few who can't, and I just think it's such a crucial skill. I'm not kind of sure how we could do that. We could perhaps, one of the examples I can think is just to find 3 or 4 logical fallacies and just put them on the screen and perhaps discuss why they are. I don't know. To me, it just feels like that's almost like the first step. And once you can think critically, it helps you spot the bullshit, especially for people like me who, I had those 3 or 4 weird things that happened to me, 7, 8, 9 years ago. And since then, it's just me and my research. So it's, I have to rely on my ability to think, listen what different people have got to say. And a huge part of that, Mike, is listening to people who I don't agree with. Obviously, I don't spend all day every day doing this, but I do occasionally listen to people that I don't agree with to hear what is it that they're saying, and could it be possible, even if they say 100 things, could there maybe be one thing that they say where I've actually got it wrong and they've got it right for whatever reason? And it's hard. It's hard to do that, especially when you've written somebody off because they said something that you don't agree with. I mean, I was so guilty of doing this back in the day, where if somebody came on and they said one thing that didn't align with what I thought, it was like, right, well, if that person's got that wrong, then clearly they're a retard and I don't want to listen to anything else that they say. And I was guilty for doing that for a while until I realized everybody's at where they're at the time. And, somebody might be ahead, if that's what we're going to say, in this area, but they might be behind over here. And you might be the other way around, which means if you're ahead of them, you're going to think, oh, I can't believe they still think this. But then on another issue, if they're ahead of you, it's easy to just assume that they're crazy for thinking that. And there's always this, you're either a sheep if you're way behind, or you're crazy if you're way ahead. And it's having the presence of mind to realize that we're potentially still susceptible to that. I mean, years and years and years and years ago, the media always used to take the piss out of Ike because he used to talk about the Queen being a reptilian. And I think the reason that they did that was because that sounds ridiculous to most people. And so Oh, well, if he says that, then what's the point of even listening to him on anything else that he says? And I think it's exploiting that human tendency to do that. Or for supporting the wrong football team.
Right, right. Yeah, there's just a lot of things. I listen to people, and once in a while when I get a chance, and if my BS meter is going off too much, then I usually turn it off. The problem I have with a lot of what's going on, a lot of the people. I mean, these people say they spent their most of their life working within this, and and if there's any people that I would that agree would be interesting, and I'd like to speak with them. So I've tried to contact several people and absolutely zero response. I said, as a like-minded person, I would like to speak with you, compare notes and stuff like that. And I get no response. To me, I don't know if it has to do directly with the fact that they just don't want to be bothered by anybody, which I think is a total scam. Because if you're not able to give people feedback or at least communicate with them, I think that's a scam. Okay, so why put your information out there? And if you're going to charge them $150 for half an hour on a phone, that's bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on that. That is BS. You know,
Yes.
and then so I can't get a hold of people, and the whole thing about is us about working together. You know, help each other out working together. But that apparently in this whole I don't know, I would say this genre, people are shit when it comes to that. Nobody wants to work together. Nobody wants to debate. Nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to, just get together. If you want to have them on your show, maybe that's one thing. But when it comes to just together, at least not any of the people that I've ever tried to come across, they just they don't leave any emails. Either they don't have any information, or they have so many layers of people that are monitoring it. It's just never going to work. So, you know, I call people out for that crap, because if you're here to help people, then that's the biggest bullshit deal, is to not have any way for them to communicate with you or contact with you. Yeah, you're going to have some people that are probably going to contact you that might not be what you expect. But you know what? Even if it's not something that works, that is that what I would prefer. I still respond to them with the best information that I can. And if I don't know the information, then I will tell them straight out. I'll say, here's where I think it'd be best for you to look, or something. I'd make recommendations, but it's a total cop out for people to not have a way for others to get in touch with them. And for charging them, that's even worse.
Yeah, I find that charging thing disgusting. I get if you've got hundreds of thousands of subscribers, you do sort of need some way of filtering messages, but to charge
Right.
people to call is disgusting. I'm with you there. Yes, people still got to eat, and people who dedicate full-time research, I understand that they need some way of being able to monetize that, but to pay for a phone call isn't it. My favorite sort of way of doing it there is to put the vast majority of your content out for free, and then at the end of every video you can always say, look, if you really enjoy this and you find it useful, I have a few extra shows, or I do a live extra hour once a week, or whatever it is. And if you want to join that and support me, and to me, that's the way to go there, because yeah, people, even full-time researchers, still need to eat. And one other thing, oh, what was it?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm not pulling punches, and I'm not hiding information. There's a couple things that I don't mention because they're personal. That's on a personal level. But other than that, the information that I share with people is pertinent, accurate information that's from the present. And we always give the date of our podcast and everything else, so people know what's going on and where we're at the time. So I'm not hiding anything from anybody. I'm giving the information out as I receive it.
My limited experience I've had in doing any sort of videos and contacting other people is, yeah, a few people ignore you. Some people get back to you, and it's very obvious that these are just like one man show type operations, and they
Right.
just don't want any. They just want to do their thing. They might email somebody as like privately, but they don't there's never this idea of a discussion. And then, of course, some people are up for a discussion, and it's just a case of finding those people. Yeah. So, any last words, Mike, before we wrap this up?
I think we covered just about everything today. I think people have heard enough from us today.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, I'd like to say then, do leave a comment if you've got one. We will read through the comments and address them in a future show. So it's it's a way to be interactive. So if you've got something to say it. And yeah, if you or somebody you know wants to be on the show and you feel that there's something valuable to contribute, also get in touch. And at some point, Mike and I'll have to do a little bit of work behind the scenes and see if we can get one of these shows on live before too long. So yeah, from me here in the UK,
and from me here in Arizona,
good night.
we wish you a good day and have a good.
Yeah, good day and good night. We are 8 hours apart. We've managed to battle the connection gremlins today.
Yep.
All right. Bye-bye.